Questions like, why are we here? What happens when you die? Where did we come from? And is there a God?
The U.S. government has been shown to have had a long-term interest in Scientology.
This is a practical question here.
I know this is an illusion, or dream, or call it the way you want to call, you know?
We are a bigger threat to the people who are secretly trying to control this planet than any other group on this planet.
But the problem with an atheist is he believes that his belief is based on fact.
Oh, it's wireless. Yeah, you got wireless one.
He's impressive. He's a powerful guy.
I can't make this shit up.
The leaders of this are not just after our church, they're after the whole of this planet.
He was put here to work out his own salvation. And we feel in Scientology that we've made a very big stride in that direction.
Howdy everybody, and welcome to the Indie Scientology podcast. I'm your host, Andy Nolch, the Space Cowboy, and isn't it lovely to be here listening to the good old Straussy Welsey. This is a podcast that has everything to do with the interesting world of Scientology. Yes, that odd religion you might have heard about. If you don't know what Scientology is, then I'll tell you it's a bunch of self-help books and exercises that evolved into a religion created by American sci-fi author L. Ron Hubbard in the 1950s. Today's guest interview is with Andreas Gross. How did you like the last show with Auditor X? Were you able to guess who the auditor is? I don't think it's too public, so if you're on the other side of the world, you probably won't be able to guess, so don't waste your time. But I reckon if you're in Anzo area, try and see if you can guess. Now it's time for us to go down that rabbit hole into the interesting world of Scientology, where up is down and down is up, where left is right and right is left, where what you thought was impossible is possible. Welcome to the show on this Wednesday, the 6th of February 2019.
Hello, welcome.
Yes, welcome, and there's something on my mind. I found out something that was interesting from a post on the internet, and then I'll look further into it because it blew my mind, and I think you need to find it out. And it's about people falling from aeroplanes and surviving. I just think this is a big thing that people need to know. If you ever fall out of an aeroplane, or I guess from a really, really big height, don't think you're going to die. What you thought was impossible is possible. You can survive. And many people have actually survived falling from an aeroplane. There's a guy during World War II that his plane was getting shot down, and he jumped out of there but didn't have a parachute or something. And he hit a tree, and like the tree branches, and there was snow on the ground and stuff. And amazingly, he could get up from it and smoke a cigarette and actually talk. And I think all he had was like one broken limb or something, or one damaged part of his body, but it wasn't even that serious. He got the type of injury he got like an injury that some people get when they play soccer, you know. So that's pretty wild. I mean, I think people really need to know that these sorts of things are possible. I thought that you fall out of an airplane, you're definitely dead unless you magically fall on a magic pillow factory or something like that, like something that really, really bizarre. But no, you can survive, and people have fallen. It's happened to other people as well. It's just, I think that's a big, big game changer, because it really does mean anything's possible. remember, what you think you get. So, don't be too worried about falling out of airplanes. Here's an independent Scientology success story. My first study / coaching, etc. with Randy. Thanks, Randy, for opening up the true magic of the very great phenomena of the 3 barriers to study. This explained why I could never be near and with the bulletin by being a big dramatizer of lack of mass and skip gradient on what I was studying, re-stimulating in full the 17 years of schooling and college along with my first 7 years of this life. This was every time I picked up this bulletin for at least 15 times. After I blew down and line charged for some time, I was really there with the bulletin and what Ron was saying. I definitely want in my auditing program to spot and blow the events in this lifetime and down the track as needed. Thanks again for using Standard LRH Scientology on me. I will never be the same. Yeah, I can't emphasize how important study tech is. I mean, study tech enables you to communicate. I mean, it just brings people's communication right up. Before study tech, before you have it, it means you can just say stuff like, can you please pass me that apple? The weather's bad today. Simple things like that. But you can't go into any intellectual or deep things and understand them properly and not make mistakes, not go into false data. So it's just, I can't think of anything better in Scientology than just the study tech alone. I mean, that is it. It's just incredible. Because we are put into this matrix and all our knowledge goes out the window. So, unless you can communicate because of the memory wiping and stuff, unless you can communicate and learn how to read and all that sort of stuff and learn how to communicate well, you won't be able to get that knowledge back, or you won't be able to find anything out. So you're just never going to get anywhere. And it's just so essential to know what things mean and stuff. It's just epic. There is another thing about study that affects me a bit, and I think I ran into it when I was younger. I think I go into overload of questions, and so because now I won't go into overload of questions because I just know so much, but back when I was like 12 years old or something, it's not a matter of just putting your hand up and asking a teacher one question. It's like you have another question, another question, another question, another question, because there's just so many things we don't know, right? And so it's like you can't just ask the teacher questions. I think I remember this happening to me at school. You can't just ask the teacher all the time questions because there is so many questions. There's so many things we don't know. And so you end up just going, well, I'll just give up on asking questions, or I'll just ask the important ones. But there are so many questions. There's so many things to know. Well, I'll give you an example. A teacher can start talking about a movie called Schindler's List or something like that, and then you have a question, and they say it's in Poland, and you have a question, where's Poland? But it's off topic, do you know what I mean, to what the English class is and the movie is you're watching, but it is on topic, but it's just like you have a question about Poland, and then like there's just so many questions, and now when I do my study and I do my stuff, I mean, I just go into things, and I go into questions, and I go on these chains and stuff, and I look up that, and because we've got these phones with the internet on us and dictionaries, I can go off and get all these questions answered. But I feel like as a kid, I wanted to do that, but I sort of learnt not to do that because you would only get the first maths question done in the whole class if you actually went down that path of asking all the questions that you want to ask. Do you know what I mean? Especially the way the school system's done, it gives you so much to do in such a short amount of time that if you actually did it properly and applied study tech, it's possible that you would only in that one class learn the title of the class. Do you know what I mean? So it's like a good teacher doing study tech will say, okay, cool, we're going to teach calculus. all right, here's and so they'll go, let's clear up calculus. And you can spend that whole class just clearing up calculus, because you clear up calculus, but then you've got another word you've got to look up that's in the definition of calculus, and it goes on and on and on. And to properly cover it, you need one whole class. So then the teacher looks at the syllable and goes, well, we're way behind. We haven't covered any of these questions because we used that one whole class just working out what calculus is. But at least the student actually learnt something. And so I think that what's good about Scientology and its courses is that you're not rushed and you're supposed to do things properly. So you can do stuff where you literally spend a whole session just learning one little simple thing. You can spend a whole Scientology class, you could call it, just looking up the definition of the word OR. Now, in any other subject or any other education system, that's considered totally ridiculous, because they'll be like, yeah, look up OR if you need to, or they wouldn't even recommend it, but they'll go, but get on back onto these questions. But Scientology says, no, you actually don't go past anything you don't understand, because otherwise you're just filling the person full of data and then they just get confused about everything and it's stupid. But I just think it's so important. And so I think with me, I ran into this problem, and I noticed there was a teacher when there's a point where I had a good relationship with an economics teacher, and I did just roll off question after question after question. The class ended up being just me and the teacher talking, like having a conversation, because there were so many questions. One thing brings up another thing that brings up another thing. And so I did it on that class a bit. But a lot of the other classes and a lot of the students, I think, don't do it because it's just like, you're never going to be able to pass that test in 6 months' time with that deadline if you actually try and properly learn what you're studying. So if I went back to the school system nowadays, even though I know so much and I know the study tech and stuff, it's quite possible I could get terrible results on the tests because I would only learn the first part of the subject, because I'll be like, well, I learnt that and I didn't go past anything. I didn't understand. I didn't skip anything. And they could think I'm dumb, but I'll be like, yeah, but I got 100% on that first part. But anyway, I just think there's, we come into this reality, the memory's wiped, so there's just so much to learn. I just feel it's like a Monopoly game, but with a manual to play the Monopoly game that's about 10 billion pages long. And you have to make it a routine to regularly get through that manual. And eventually, once you just know so much, you stop running into problems, knowing people's tone levels, knowing where Poland is, knowing what a probe is or something. There's just so many things to know. And you really need to know it. Anyway, this is Post of the Week, and it's by Lana Mitchell, and it says, How We Stop Ourselves. I have met many Scientologists in the field over the last 10 years. Only a fraction of those I have met are actively studying and auditing, and there are a myriad of reasons why. There are no local auditors, I don't have Scientology materials, lack of time to do regular study, not financially able to pay for auditing, I have to care for my aging parents, busy raising a family, I have to work full-time, etc. I have out-tech on my case. I just want to take a break from it all. I too used to have similar problems, and I guess I had come to a crossroads. Here I was, out in the field, with no connection to the church, few materials and no comm lines, and just trying to rebuild my life. Trying to figure out what I had been through and how to get back on track. When the challenges in life are big, trying to solve how to also move up the bridge can easily be pushed aside or left as a lower priority. But then I discovered something. The direct cause of my own lack of progress up the bridge was directly related to my own considerations. I knew there were no auditors locally, so how could I get auditing? I had 2 children under 5 and had been having broken sleep as a consequence, so how could I be sessionable? I don't have time to read LRH books as my days are so full, but interestingly, there was always time to watch a few hours of television nightly. All of these were considerations. The Scientology definition of consideration is a continuing postulate that a state or item will continue. I found that if I could spot what my considerations was for not moving up the bridge, not studying, not auditing others, then I could spot the postulate that was keeping it that way and get rid of it. Routinely, the postulate was goofy and quite solvable once I put my attention to it and took actions to remedy the situation. And it worked. Over the last 8 years in the field, I've moved from clear up through the OT levels to solo knots and have been auditing solo for 4 years. I have been studying on my levels and onto the St. Hill Special Briefing course, and I have audited hundreds of hours on others. Considerations are the wonderful way we stop ourselves. We make a postulate, I want to be trained OT, and then we have a consideration that it is all a bit too hard right now, and thus we make no progress. By spotting that continuing counter-postulate, everything resolves, and like magic, things happen. And of course it works on any subject and in any area, in any area. At work, home, in relationships, you name it. If you can spot your considerations that is keeping something the way it is, then you can immediately move to cause and change it. It is straight out of the axioms. Thanks, LRH. All right, yeah. Good post of the week. I find that when people say the reasons why they can't do something, like there are no local auditors, they don't have Scientology materials, they're too busy with kids, all those things to me are more reasons for them to get into Scientology, because it shows that they're not able to, it shows that they're in a bit of overwhelm, really. It shows they've got too many things going on. So when they're saying all these reasons why they shouldn't go in session or get on to study, that, to me, they're reasons why they must get on to study. And to be honest, if somebody isn't busy and has time for study, maybe you don't even need to get on study. Do you know what I mean? So those are reasons. Yeah, anyway. So, you know, but one thing as well, what makes me think as well when I see these reasons why people aren't getting on study is I think, well, you're putting this shitty matrix, this meshed universe, ahead of your spiritual advancement. And I get sucked into it all the time because this universe is a trap. You have to remember that. And so the trick is to make this universe number 2. Even if this universe has loved ones in it, even if it has fantastic food or like a special job or no auditors nearby or whatever, this universe is second. You're the most important. This universe wants you to think all the crap in it is more important and get you sucked into the bull crap and be busy by the pretty flowers or something. But that's not important. What's most important is outside this universe, and that's what you've got to work on. You. So I've had to do that. I've had to force myself because I'd have to-do lists and stuff, and I'd easily skip working on my spiritual practices and study and stuff to do these other things. But the truth is that my priorities are wrong. And so I had to correct them. And now it's like if I've got a bunch of things to do, I drop them so that I can do my personal enhancement. You have to remember this universe isn't important. There are other things that are important. And what I found as well is that if I did my spiritual practices, I'll become more uptone, and then I would have good luck, and I would just make things happen and stuff. So it'll be more OT, and then that would handle things on my to-do list. And also I realised how serious this matrix is that we're in, and this battle of good versus bad which we are in. And I realised that I've got to have my spiritual armour on, because you can get trapped or you can get infected by evil. And what's most important is you being uptone and vibrating at those higher levels so that that badness stays away. I guess it's kind of like a soldier in battle. The soldier has to have rest time. The soldier has to eat. He can't just spend the whole time battling, doing the to-do list stuff. Because if it spends the whole time battling, it will get worn down, it will get affected, and then it'll get trapped and tricked and dumbed down and everything, because it's all busy just fighting the whole time. But that soldier needs some me time to improve themselves, bounce back up, and then go back out there and tackle all those to-do list things. And then go back again and advance themselves, and then go back and do the to-do list stuff. Because if you don't do the advance and take that time out, then you'll be bad at doing your to-do list stuff, and you'll get distracted by some fancy little game within this matrix we're in. And you'll forget about your spiritual stuff and just be busy thinking about some game. When I had an experience, possibly where I went outside this universe, my initial reaction was that this universe is just ridiculous and nothing should be taken seriously in this universe, or you shouldn't care about anything in this universe. So if you're saying, I can't go in and get studied, or I can't go and do auditing and that sort of stuff because I've got to do blah, 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 you're taking all these things on your to-do list seriously. You're taking this thing, you're taking that thing seriously, and all that sort of stuff. That's a really wrong attitude. Nothing in this universe should be taken seriously. That's why you should get on your personal enhancement time, because that's dealing with you as a being who is not in this universe. If you follow with me. So you're outside this universe, you go in, and then you get sucked by all the trappings and the entertainment, all the games and all this sort of stuff in there. And nothing in this universe should be taken seriously. So you've got to get back in con with yourself that's outside this universe. That's what matters. You, Theta, that's what matters. That's the only thing that should be taken seriously in this universe. Actually, that's a quote. Put it on my gravestone or something. Nothing should be taken seriously except you. Nothing should be taken seriously in this matrix except Theta, because Theta isn't even in this matrix. You see what I mean? So if you're going to get studied or get audited, they're you stuff. There's so many cycles to get distracted with. It's never ending. I see people, I've seen them who are addicted to this messed universe. They tend to be that hectic type of people. They tend to be more one-ones. They tend to be more skeptics and mainstream scientists. And all they see is this universe. That's all that's all they see. That's all they think exists. And if they want to get ahead in their career, or if they want to achieve what they want, they think that they have to do stuff in this physical universe. So if they want to be some big shot businessman, they run around, they do all this physical stuff, and they're just having to do so much all the time. Well, if they just stopped and worked on themselves and advanced themselves spiritually, they could achieve those things without having to run around hectically in this messed universe. They could postulate and achieve. I notice this because when I'm around some of those people who are like that, I've noticed how I can one-up them and beat them and be better than them, and it fucking pisses them off. Because they're like, he's not putting in effort. He's not running around doing all these things hectically. He's not requiring mass perception to find something out. He just knows it natively. I mean, how do I just know it intuitively? How do I know that? Because I've done a lot of spiritual work, and it's gotten me to the point where some things I can do just by intuition. I can just know things. I mean, they hate that, because if they were ever to find something out, they would have to research it for ages and ages and look all this stuff up and have all this messed universe evidence for something. And then I can come along and not have to do all that, and then I can get it right. And they'll be like, how the hell do you know that? I'll be like, intuition, But I did my fair share of work to advance myself spiritually. I did tons of hours of objectives and stuff. But you should get really positive and really happy, because you can achieve all this stuff without having to run around and rely on messed crap. Like Jesus, for example, when he was setting up his little missions around Israel and stuff and trying to create a revolution or whatever, I mean, he was sitting there on a rock communicating to people, mind to mind, directing his disciples and stuff what to do. I mean, talk about easy. No wonder why he's sitting there so chilled. No wonder why he doesn't look like he's stressed and that sort of stuff running around. Because he can just sit there and postulate and communicate to these other people. He doesn't have to run and actually tell them, or grab someone by the shoulder and go, you tell, blah, blah, blah. He's just relying on being an OT. It's much easy. It's really easy. And so, for me, when I go into something, I rely on being OT. I don't rely I have to have this all. I do get things prepared and that sort of stuff, and I do stuff in the physical universe because it's part of the game. It's sort of interesting being in this messed universe. And I'm not massively OT, so, I need to do some stuff, but I'm not like these other people who are skeptics who just only have the physical universe. They'll be like, I have to have everything prepared. I have to have the speech perfectly written out. And if someone says this, then I've got to say that. Let's say they're doing some questionnaire or something. Someone says this, and I've got to say that. And they all have it all perfectly. And they've been staying up all night the previous night before. And they go out there and they go to their event and they're like, now it's perfect, And they go out and they do an okay job. But I come along and I can have a little bit of preparation, but I can be like, hey, I'm OT, It'll just go right. And also I've got God on my side, by the way. So I'm just like, God will work it out. And so they're like, and the skeptic will be like, what do you mean freaking God will look at it after you? Or you, what do you mean you're magical and OT and stuff? That's not possible. Blah, blah, blah. But I'll go in there and then I'll achieve a good result. And it'll just be because God made it happen. And it'll just be because my postulate made it happen, just magically. And I'll be like, see, it was pretty easy. You know what I mean? I didn't have to stay up all night studying really, really hard to get all that paperwork in, all this mess universe stuff. Because I was being looked after. But it takes a lot of spiritual advancement to get to that stage where God is on your side. Because I believe that God is on everyone's side right now. And God might be you. It might be a higher version of you. It might be stuff outside this dimension we don't understand. But I believe that there is a communication there between you and God. To everyone out there, it's just a different degree. And the more spiritually advancing the more you advance yourself spiritually, the more you get in communication with this God thing. And you get guided by it. And it's right there assisting you. And you can go into a situation where someone holds up a bat to your face and you can actually not have fear because you know that God's there looking after you. And you're like, hey, I'm not here to have a fight or whatever. But someone who's not connected to God will go in there and think, oh my God, I have to either run really, really fast to get away, or I have to do an amazing job of talking to this guy to stop him from hitting me with a baseball bat. And all they see is the meshed universe. Do you see what I mean? All their solutions come about through doing stuff in the meshed universe. Whereas my one and people who are in communication with God are like, you'll look after itself. God will look after it. Or you'll just magically stop. It's a massive life hack to open up your godlike being and just be able to make reality happen without having to do stuff in the physical universe. And if you're not going in there and getting audited, if you're not going in there and studying, if you're not working on yourself, your self-advancement, if you're not working on you, the part of you that's outside this matrix, then you won't ever get this life hack. People go and play games and that sort of stuff to learn life hacks and stuff, but it's not worth it. People go and play video games and they learn how to hack video games. It's all a waste of time. Do you see how they're just distracted by a game? It's entertaining computer game, I get it. But it's just a game. What you really should be doing is learning how to play the game of this matrix and learning the hacks of this matrix. And you're only going to get that if you pull your fucking finger out and go in and get audited. Okay? Unless you make it happen. And all this crap's going to come in to try and stop you from getting study and from getting all that other stuff, because that's the point of this trap. You wouldn't be trapped if it was easy to get in session. You wouldn't be trapped if it was easy to learn stuff. But all this crap comes in and makes it harder for you. It's the evil that's coming in trying to stop you. And the evil is masked in many different forms. Right? I'm not saying computer games are evil, but technically they sort of are. Because they're part of the whole thing. They're stopping you. And when you go in to do stuff, all this crap will come in and try and stop you. And it's up to you to postulate and say, no, I'm not agreeing with it. No, this universe doesn't matter. I'm going to sleep in today. Do you see what I mean? I'm not going to wake up early and rush around mad trying to do stuff. I'm going to have some me time and just sleep in. I'm going to have some me time, and this is with me, do some yoga. I'm going to have some me time. I'm going to read. So, you've got to get your priorities straight. Have you ever met anyone who says, when you ask them what's the most important thing, or what's important or whatever, and they say it's something outside this universe, or something like that? You just find that so much of it, it's just all a big distraction. I shouldn't crap on, but it's up to you to not. You don't even have to do anything. Like I said, you just got to realize and actually believe it, that what is most important is not any crap in this universe and on the to-do list that has to do with this universe. The only things important on your to-do lists are stuff that involve your personal enhancement. That is it. You know, the SPs actually know this. They actually pump up sports because they want to keep men distracted with sports. There's just so many distractions. Just remember that. In order to keep people in the matrix, you have to distract them from realizing that they're actually outside of the matrix. And some of them, they're skeptics and stuff, don't even think that they exist outside this matrix. They don't even think that there's anything more. They think it's just this physical universe. That's how far gone they are. They're a write-off. Well, you're not. You know that there's more going on. You know that there's stuff outside this universe. And you've got to get in communication with that stuff outside this universe and you'll get answers and you'll improve. So, no more excuses. You've got to look at that to-do list and look at how long it is and not care, because it's in this universe. All that stuff relates to this universe. The only things you should care about is the to-do lists, is the stuff on your to-do lists that are like helping you, that help you to wake up and that sort of stuff. Anyway, I don't know what that was, but anyway. Here's a Scientology joke. It's just because I'm, discovering this stuff as well. And it's taken me years to get to the point where I just have to say, okay, I won't worry about that long to-do list or whatever, or, don't worry. And I just found that I could get, especially when someone has auditing wins and stuff and you get keen and excited about playing the game of life or whatever, you suddenly find there's all these things on your to-do list and you can get distracted by them. But you have to learn to be able to say, I'm not going to work hard, I'm going to sleep in, I'm going to look after myself, I'm going to enjoy this experience, I'm not going to worry about all those things that haven't been done. None of them are important. What's important is you getting in session. Then in comes starting a business or whatever else is on your to-do list. See what I mean? But what's most important is you getting in session, you studying first. Then the other stuff comes. You're living to self-improve yourself. You're not self-improve yourself. I know the wording sounds dodgy, but you're not self-improving yourself so that you can live better. Do you know what I mean? So that you can then play the game of life better or whatever, you know what I mean? Or so you can then be great and do all this other stuff in this crappy mess, this matrix. You're self-improving yourself so that you can get out of all this. You see what I mean? We have to face the fact of the conspiracy, which is this physical universe. I'm quite certain it's a trap. I'm quite certain that SPs a long time ago worked out how to control spiritual beings and turn them into cows that they could milk. Exactly the same as what they're doing now with us, the local SPs here on Earth are doing. They put us into control systems and stuff, and they milk us, and they're controllers basically, and that's just what they do. And they think that other people are there to be dominated and to just use as slaves and stuff. Well, I'm sure that the reason how we got into this mess universe in the first place was because we were being used for some purpose by some of these bad guys. We've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten that we're not even in this universe. It's just all a con. Remember that. Don't take anything seriously and get in there and get into the study. All right. Okay, here's a Scientology joke. An evil genie captured a Scientologist and her two friends and banished them to the desert for a week. The genie allowed each person to bring one thing. The first friend brought a canteen so he wouldn't die of thirst. Canteen's like a water thing. The second friend brought an umbrella to keep the sun off. The Scientologist brought a car door because if it got too hot, she could just roll down the window. That's a bit of a famous joke, that one. I've already heard it before in a different format. I think it was instead of a Scientologist, it was an Irish man. That was at least a joke. I could at least put that in the category of a joke. And I know when I first heard it, I found it funny years ago. But some of those other ones in the book are incredibly bad. Okay, it's now time for today's guest interview with Andreas Gross. We discuss the doppelganger L. Ron Hubbard theory. We discuss when L. Ron Hubbard went off lines, when he possibly died. And we discuss a bit of the tech and the changes to the tech. And it's quite an interesting interview. This is part one. I'm going to do part two with Andreas because it was needed, but also because I think he knows a bit about other stuff in the world that need to get covered. But this interview here is pretty much just about Scientology. So let's dig into this, chuck on a pot of tea, and let's hear some talk about the world's most interesting and controversial religion, Scientology.
After all, we haven't been invited, and curiosity often leads to trouble. Goodbye, Dinah. Goodbye.
Today's guest interview is with Andreas Gross. He's been a Scientologist for years. He's written books. He runs a Scientology blog called The Original Scientology 1972. It has interesting information on it, and he has an online bookstore. This guy is quite the conspiracy theorist. Andreas Gross, are you there?
Yes, hello, Andy Knowles. Nice to meet you.
Yes, it's good to meet you. You've got quite an interesting blog there.
Right. Yeah, it's the result of my research in the last 2 decades. I left the church in 1999, and then I found out that the church was taken over by our enemy, the deep state, people working for the new world government, the NWO. Yeah, and my question was, when did this start? When did they start to take over Scientology? It is now in the wrong hands. It's very obvious for most of your listeners. But rarely people ask when it started. They just accepted the information, the big split of the Scientology movement in 1982 with the Mission Holder Conference. It was a big third dynamic engram. Yes, but I think the takeover was much earlier.
Hold on. Don't you mean third? Don't you mean third dynamic engram?
Engram. It's a engram of our community, Scientologists.
Yeah, but would you call the Mission Holders Conference the third dynamic engram? Is that accurate?
It is part of this engram. The engram is a distraction of the purpose and the technology of Scientology. And with this Mission Holder Conference in 1982, it became very obvious.
Okay, I don't mean to fuss about like a little point, but I like to keep things accurate. So, but you said it's a first dynamic engram, or that's what I heard. Did I hear you wrong? Third. Okay. Third. All right. Cool. Yeah, I was going to say because I was just a bit thrown off by that, and I like I think important things like that make a difference, because if someone says things wrong, like minor mistakes, it makes you not want to believe some of the other stuff that they say. So I just want to clear that up. So the date 1972 is important to you, isn't it? And you're saying to the Scientology world it's important. Why exactly? I think, from my understanding, you think that LRH died at this point. Is that right?
I think he left or lost the connection to Scientologists. It is reported that he went into hiding the 9 missing months, and I doubt that he came back after the 9 months. So there was a takeover, and he was mocked up with a lot of tricks. One of the tricks might be a doppelganger, a double, looking similar to LRH. But other tricks were people writing as ghostwriter, writing issues in the name of LRH. And other people mocked him up by presenting the SO number 1 line. The com line Ron offered, you can always write to me. This was pushed by management very much in the late 70s. Everyone should write a letter to Ron. And they said Ron is so happy to get big bags of letters every day, reading every one of them and answering himself. That, of course, is a lot of bullshit, because Ron is not a collector of stamps or some things like this. He's a very busy man.
Yeah, I know. He was too busy to answer them all, and they had a few staff answering them. So you don't know if he died in 1972, but you do think he went off lines in 1972.
I don't think that he died, because after this he wrote the 2 big science fiction works, Mission Earth and Battlefield Earth. This he wrote in 1973 or 74, and was only published 10 years later by
Hold on. That's interesting. So are you saying Battlefield Earth that got released in 82 was actually written in 73?
Right.
I find
in these books is nothing from the culture of the 80s. Everything which is mentioned in the books was a subject was talked about in the beginning of the 70s. For example, an author who would write a book in the 80s, he would mention the personal computer. It was the start of the personal computer as we know it today. I had my first one in 82. A friend of mine started with it in 80. So, of course, Ron would have written and used a computer himself for writing. But the manuscript of these books were written by a typewriter. And we know from the 60s that he needed a helping hand, someone. He wrote his text on 2 typewriters. While he was writing 1 page down very quickly, someone else had to fill the other typewriter with new paper. And when he finished filling the typewriter with the paper, he would switch the typewriter and continue on the other one.
Wow.
That was the 60s. So in the beginning of the 80s, we already had word processing, personal computer. So of course, Ron would have written on such a computer and also mentioned these computers in his stories. But instead, he mentions mainframe computers with a terminal, with a teletext terminal. That was a tech of the 60s or beginning of the 70s.
In Battlefield Earth, there's a reference to how NASA or something, they sent out something that was printed on metal, that message to the aliens. Do you know how in the 70s NASA sent something out, and it was some message for aliens, and I think it had a Johnny B. Good song on it, and it had a picture of man on it or something.
Right.
And in the book Battlefield Earth, he makes a reference to that, doesn't he?
I don't remember, but
because from what I remember, in Battlefield Earth, the reason the Cyclos found out about Earth was because they came across this probe that had been sent out, and the probe had rare metals in it, and so the Cyclos were like, "Oh wow, this is fantastic! This has got great metal, and it came from this planet because it had a star map on it." So then they went to Earth and just bombed the shit out of Earth, and that was like a funny thing because it was like in the 70s or whatever, NASA sent out this thing, and they didn't really know what they were doing. They were just sending out a message to aliens, and aliens could be bad, and you know what I mean? So it was kind of funny. So I thought, knowing the date of that can help date when that book was written.
Right. Yeah, I accept this argument.
Yeah. I don't know when that was. I definitely, I felt.
Found out when this was.
Yeah. So LRH was able to get his fiction books out there. So why doesn't that mean that when he was in hiding or out of comm, why doesn't it mean he could have gotten some tech out there?
Because the people on the comm line were hostile to LRH. The people on the comm line between LRH and Scientology was David Miscavige and Pat Broker. And these are hostile people, as we now know.
Okay, so do you think it's...
Do you agree that David Miscavige is hostile?
Yes.
And anti-Scientologist?
Yes.
So how could LRH get out tech if the enemy is controlling his communication line?
Yeah, so
and that the enemy tried to withhold these two books, but in the early 80s they had the problem to prove that LRH is still there. It was questioned more and more, where is LRH? Especially after this mission holder conference. People want to see LRH and want to hear that LRH confirms RTC. And RTC mocked up this Ronst journal with this teletype writer between every sentence of LRH. I think that was a fake LRH speaker. I'm an imposter, speech imposter.
Like a voice artist or something.
Yes.
Impersonator.
So they needed more proof, and so they organized the Ron Hubbard Jr. attack. Devolve. He attacked LRH or the church and sued the church and said, I have the feeling my father is dead and I want my share of my heritage. So the church came into the position to prove the well-being of LRH. And they did it very complicated by a special ink provided by FBI and fingerprints acknowledged by FBI, instead of just creating a video as we are doing now. In the beginning 80s, it was very easy to make videos. So the usual way to prove that a person is living would be to give this person a newspaper of today, holding it to the camera and saying, "I'm well, I'm free, I'm not in a prison." But to prove his existence with fingerprints, I think this proves nothing for me. But the judge accepted this and so made a final decision that, well, LH is living and okay. And so this question was solved.
Yeah, what's sort of awkward about that is because LH could probably not want anyone to be able to see what he looks like because he's in hiding. So, he didn't want anyone to see him.
I didn't got the question.
Well, he was in hiding, so he didn't want anyone to see what he looks like. So if he made a video, then the court and
explanation, I think. It's just a weird explanation for all the unlogical outpoints. Since 1972, we don't have any photos from LH. And before this, he made self-pictures every year together with his new camera. So perhaps you take a look at this booklet, LH the Photographer. You have a lot of pictures of LH and his camera, and he made these pictures himself. And I think these were not done because he thinks he is so self-important. He just made it as a dead man switch. You've heard about the dead man switch?
No. Or is it when someone dies, you replace it with a doppelganger?
No, dead man switch is something today you use the internet software for this. And as long as I'm alive, I log into this website and say I'm still alive, proven by the password. Just I know, no one else knows it. So this web service knows, Andreas is still alive. At the moment when I don't log in, this website is going to send out letters to my friends and say, where is Andreas Gross? He's lost. Or for example, another dead man switch is built into every train for the train, what's the name? The chief of the train, the pilot of trains. They have a dead man switch, and they have to tap on the switch every minute. And if he gets a heart attack, to avoid that the train runs out of control, it stops because he didn't hit this dead man switch.
All right.
Understand this concept?
Yep.
It's a system, however you realize the system, which proves whether you are alive or not. And LH installed two kinds of dead man switch. One is that he made a photograph of himself every year, and the date of the photograph can be recognized by the camera he used. He bought a new camera every year, and showing this new camera in the picture. So, looking at the camera, a professional can tell you which year this is from. That's one method to prove he is alive, because he obviously knew that he would come into the situation of identity theft. That someone one day will grab his identity and pose being an LRH. And he wanted to avoid this situation. The second method was in his lectures. In every lecture, he starts with the words, today's date is so-and-so. I know of not many lectures where he forgot to tell the date. But just have until 72 we have lectures by LH, and after this these lectures are missing.
Okay, so
visual and audio are the main perceptions. The audio are the lectures, the videos are the photos, and they end in 72.
So when do you think he actually died then? What year?
In my research, he got lost in June. The last in May and June he was researching expanded dynamics, and we have the CSS of the boulders in the expanded dynamics course. And the last CS by LH was on the 7th of June 1972. And then abruptly he was away. No more CSS in these folders. Although the cases were not completed. So another CS took over and completed these cases and the CS info. So I think the very exact date where he got lost is after the 7th of June 1972.
All right. So I remember I saw a photo of it could have been LRH, but it was supposed to be LRH. But it was a photo of him on the ship, I think, giving out a certificate or something. And when I saw this photo, I was just like, whoa, that's not LRH. That looks like an American man that's probably a similar height to LRH. But I just saw it and I'm just like, that doesn't look like his beingness. And it was a photo, I guess, sort of from a distance. And I just thought, that doesn't really look like LRH. So that made me sort of think, yeah, that the doppelganger thing could be possible. And there's other famous people in the past who have used doppelgangers. It's quite a common thing. And then I haven't fully read it, but I've listened to the audiobook of Mission Earth. And in that, there's a doppelganger. And in the Mission Earth book, there seems to be a lot of truth in it. And it's like LRH has just said, here's the truth, but it's a fiction story, but it's the truth. So I definitely can prescribe to the doppelganger idea. So
not only in Mission Earth, also in Battlefield Earth is a doppelganger.
Is there?
Of both books have a hero. In Mission Earth, it's Jethro Heller, and in Battlefield Earth, Johnny Goodboy Taylor. And for both people, there existed doppelgangers.
Well, I don't remember the doppelganger in Battlefield Earth. What happens with that?
And Battlefield Earth, Johnny Goodboy Taylor used the doppelganger himself to cheat Terrell, the Cyclo.
Oh, okay, I think I remember that. Yeah. Okay. So.
And then there's a third book after 72, also with a doppelganger. About a doppelganger was the main theme of the book. I Pedito. You have heard of the book I Peditro?
No.
It's a book published also in the 80s by Bridge.
Oh, wow, fiction book.
It's a book about, I can show it.
Ah, I Pietro, yeah. I Pedito.
Right. And it's a book about an agent, I think CIA agent or something like this, and his doppelganger.
All right.
And in the foreword is mentioned that Ron had a doppelganger himself, which gave him the idea about this book.
Oh, really? It actually says that?
Yes. And
oh, wow.
He once was called Pedrito. Hi, Pedrito, was someone talking to Ron, and he said, what? I'm Ron Hubbard. No, I know who you are. You are this criminal, Bandito Pedrito.
All right.
And he was quite astonished.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I remember hearing that L. Ron Hubbard's butler noticed that there was 2 different shoe sizes. Have you heard about this?
Yes. I think he used a doppelganger himself in the 60s and beginning of 70s to buy himself some time, because a lot of people came to Centaur or later to the Apollo with this marketing button, come here to the top arc where LH, where you can see and meet LH every day. So I think he just used a doppelganger to give all these publics some respect, and as a host to these publics, so that he could concentrate on his research or CSing or whatever was important.
Wow, that makes a bit of sense, because LH does seem to have done so much, and if there was someone who could just do public meet and greets and that sort of stuff, then he could focus on working, and then that person, I guess, could tell him what happened at the meet and greet or something. So that, I could see how that makes sense, yeah. So what happened?
The doppelganger was used later to post his existence, could probably be. And it is not just a weird theory of mine, it's which one can follow or not. The importance of this is that the technology, Scientology bridge, was changed since 72. And it was turned around and made a black tech today.
Mm.
And that is the importance of this question. When did the takeover start?
Yeah. Now, hold on a second. I just want to show...
It started in 72, or when it, if it was done in 82. It's a difference of 10 years. And in these 10 years, all the revisions happened. There were no revisions of any policy or bulletin before 72. All the revisions started in 72.
Oh, really? So they didn't do revisions in the 60s?
Oh, no revision in the 50s, no revisions in the 60s, not even in 70 or 71.
Now, I've got to write that down. I've got to personally investigate that myself, because that's a big statement.
Yeah. I made a bulletin about this and gave the statistics on this. But you can do it yourself. You take the red volumes and write down every revision date, and you will confirm this.
Well, I think that's a really big argument, to make in your case towards the 72 thing, because I mean, anyway, that's just interesting, because I would have thought there would be like a PL written in 60 and then a revision in 66. So was it bulletins and PLs that all the revisions started 72 onwards?
Right. At least the revisions which are indicated as with the R and RA, RB, and so on. Perhaps Ron revised some tech earlier. For example, the Dynetics book was expressly revised in an HCOB called, I think, Dynetics Auditor Course was the name of the HCOB in 1965. And then he gave all the faults of the Dynetic books, of the Dynetic book, and said, we don't see it now in this way. Of course, he corrected himself, but he didn't put out a revised Dynetics book. He just put it out in a new bulletin. He never changed an older bulletin. He wrote a new one, perhaps referred to the old one and said this replaces the old.
Okay.
For example, if you look up the bulletins about the model session in the mid-60s, there are 20 or 30 bulletins about the model session, how to start and stop a session. But they are not revisions to each other, it's just a new issue about model session. And the newest one was a valid one. But the older one were not necessarily cancelled, because in the older one still were valid information, basic information about the model session, which repeated in the later ones. So you have to read them all, the 20 bulletins about the model session, to get the idea how we should do the model session.
Okay, I always thought in Scientology that the amount of revisions were a bit odd. I just thought, like, why are there just so many revisions? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I understand, he has a new discovery and releases some new tech, and then he has to change something, but I just thought there seemed oddly too many. And, when, it makes sense, especially with, GAT2 and GAT1, and then the changes done before that, and then the changes in the 70s, like, it's just a lot. So anyway, I've got a picture here. I'm going to hold in front.
Yes.
Picture of LRH. Is this a doppelganger, or is this a doppelganger, or is this the real LRH?
In the dark glasses, and the pictures of the doppelganger always have a hat on, because the hairline is very specific for a person. So the doppelganger always wears a hat to hide this hairline.
Okay.
So my first idea is that is not LH, but of course I cannot be sure. Today we have new technology. We have the technology of the government uses video cameras everywhere in all streets. The biometrics of the distance between the eyes and mouth line and nose and so on, they can identify persons. So it would be a nice project to use this technology and take a look at all these photos we have, and this system would sort out what is age and what is not.
Can they recognize someone if they're wearing glasses and a hat? The technology?
With glasses, it will be quite difficult because the distance of the eyes is very important. With the big glasses, you can't see this distance anymore. But there are other images, for example, in the VMH, the Volunteers Minister's Handbook, there are some images of the crew, of the photography crew with LH, and I think this is the doppelganger. And also Apollo Stars is in after 72, I think 74, 75. And all these photos are not available anymore in the church because they know that with today's technology, we can recognize all the fakes. So they got rid of all the audios, lectures they faked, and got rid of all photos which could reveal the doppelganger.
In this photo that I showed you, it's got a dimple on his cheek or something, a little dent. And I noticed that is something that LRH has, or his doppelganger has. It's a little dint on his cheek. That's a little recognizing mark which will be helpful in being able to spot, you know, if someone's the real deal. Unless you could just get a cigarette and burn someone's cheek, and then when it grows away or whatever, it will just have a little mark there, so it would look like you've got a mark there. So maybe you could recreate that. I'm not that sure.
You can create a lot of things in a doppelganger with cherubim medical methods. But yeah, there are a lot of approaches to investigate my theory. My main approach is the technology. I look into the technology and see that it is turned around 180 degree. Like ethics technology is used against the person. We have a black ethics conditions today. Or the Dianetics NED is a black Dianetic which restimulates more than it erases. I made a bulletin about this to prove this fact. People who are getting NED run more hours in repair than that they confront their engrams in the sessions. So, NED method is going back earlier similar too fast, so that you cannot really as is the engram chain, and just at best get a key out, but not an erasure of the chain.
Yeah,
I done a Dianetics that was much more successful.
I have to say I agree. From my experience with NET is that, yeah, it seems like it's a quickie version of Dianetics. And, I mean, you can just try it and see how you do it the other way, and it's more thorough, and you get in there. And with the NED, it's like, it's just been way fastened up. It's like you're in a, you know, it's just like, I don't know, it just doesn't quite go in there, and it's, you know, anyway. So, I mean, I'm when I go to do my net and go clear, I'll see how I go on it, and if I notice that I'm just not getting that much from it, I'll just say, look, I want to go on expanded Dianetics. I want to do this tech before Ned came out.
Right.
So I'll
the matter, wherever you look at, it's the policies, it's they are changed, altered, or every part of the tech int rundown is it's a fake int rundown. They call it the end of endless int rundown. This name, the end of endless int rundown, it's for Scientology int handling, not the Dianetics as it was before. It leads to endless out int. You cannot solve the int case. The PCs get int, out int again and again. It's a never ending.
There's definitely something wrong with that end of endless int rundown, because it's got such a funny name, because it seems like it's not the end of the endless int rundown, and people are doing more than one of them.
Yeah, if you use Dianetics on int, you finally end up solving the case. So they got rid of Dianetics in the int handling, and so they ended up with an endless int. And as they are 1.1er people with covered hostility, they like these names, these ironic names, which tell you the opposite of what it is. So they call it the end of endless int rundown, while they are laughing about us and saying we introduced an endless out int in the birth.
So I'm
this PTS rundown, it's fucked up, the PTS rundown. Everyone is called a PTS, although per LH it's just 20% of the people are PTS, and they usually don't end up in Scientology, because you need a lot of straightness and clearness to become a Scientologist and stay a Scientologist. So really PTS person usually blow very early. But in Scientology today, everyone gets PTS rundown and gets the wrong indication with this. It's like a third party into your family usually. They tell you you are PTS to your mother or your father, brother, sister, whatever. And this creates a third party. They want to create trouble into your family instead of helping you in your family salvage all problems. They create the problem. So it's a black tech.
Yeah, the problem with the PTSness is because the church is a suppressive, and I think on the lists or whatever, there's no item saying the church. You can never have the org or the church be the suppressive, can you? So, so it's impossible to find the right target or whatever.
Yes. I studied the PTSSP course in the church 2 times. The first time in the beginning of the 90s, the second time in the end of the 90s, in the golden age of tech. So I know this course very well. And I went into this subject very deep and took the green volumes and looked up every reference of PTS in the green volumes, and found out that 50% of the policies where Ron mentions PTSness, 50% was about suppressives within the org, suppressives among staff member or execs. That was very eye-opening for me, because Ron really used this tool to find out the enemies in our own group. But today in the church, you always have to look outside. For example, if you take the bulletin PS handling 10th of August 1973, it is this first issue which you have to study in your PTS CS1, where it says all illnesses, all failures stem from PTSD, from suppression, which is a lie. It's not LH, it's the opposite. And in this reference, you are asked to look for the first beginning of your illness or stress or whatever.
Hold on a second, I'm just going to turn the light off. They keep on talking because I can hear you. I just need to turn the light off. So keep on talking.
Yes?
Yeah.
Like 1, 2, 3. Hello? What is?
No, it's alright. I just had to turn the light off. Because it's one of those white lights, and they've got bad energy and stuff. Like, they disturb me. It's a certain, you know, those ones that are the modern. Yeah, there's something bad about them. They actually, like, they make me squint, and I think if I get exposed to a lot of the white light, I end up actually getting a headache. So there's something,
right. Just stimulating.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but naturopaths know about this artificial lighting and the fluorescent bulbs and stuff, and they know that they're unhealthy.
That's why they enforce them to us.
Yeah, that's why the government gives them out for free in Australia. Or they used to. They used to give out heaps of them for free, and they would wait. You would get telemarketers calling you, annoying you, trying to give you these light bulbs, and it's just a joke because that was a big waste of money. Anyway, continue what you're saying.
Yeah, where it was about. What was it? I lost.
It was about PDSSP tech.
PDSSP, yes.
Yeah, about the course. Because hold on a second. So you're doing the course, right? And one quick question I want to ask you is: did it change much when they released GAT1? Did they screw all that PDSSP course much?
Yes, the PTSP course was drilled in the 70s because the original was just a small course for the auditor, how to audit PTSP. And this was changed again and again since 1977 to a course which is just a heading for every single person about his PTSdness and how to recognize his peace. But never look into the org, always look outside. There are no SPs inside, of course.
But I'm wondering with GAT1, specifically when that was released, did you notice a big change between when you did it in the early 90s and then when you did it in the later 90s?
No, not from the content. The difference is the study tech. It's a black study tech was introduced with GAT. Before we had the LH study tech with clearing words, with a law that all misunderstandings stem from misunderstood words or symbols. So every time when I could not understand something or could not even duplicate it and answer the questions of a supervisor or a twin, I was put back to my material and should find a MU. And I found it and cleared the MU, and after this was able to understand the text. And this got rid of with the Golden Age of Tech. They just drill prepared answers into you with these drill.
The pattern drills you're talking about?
Yes, the pattern drills. You always have to give a predefined answer, and if you can't answer, then you get a flunk and get shown what the correct answer is, and they continue with the next question, and then repeat again until you can answer all questions correctly, but you are not asked for the MU, and you don't restudy the bulletin which you failed on. So that's the opposite study tech. The LH study tech is based on self-determinism, that you duplicate the material and then decide for yourself whether this is true or not, or whether you want to apply it or not, and how you can apply it. And the other one is the technology of the implanter. GAT is implanter study tech, just to fill in the data into your mind until you can reproduce it like a robot. There's no need to understand what you learned. It's just you give the right answer. It's just a very glib. They produce glib students.
Yes.
And with this glib, you cannot apply it.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that a bit, like sort of with maybe star rate checkouts or something like that. Like a student will be checking you out and they'll ask for the meaning of like a Scientology word, and it's like, you know, if you sort of don't answer it verbatim or really close to verbatim, it's considered like an MU. And it's like, it's not an MU. Like, you answer it as, you know, you assimilate the data and you say what it is, and you shouldn't just be robotic. But yeah, I noticed that it seems to really encourage the student who's more glib, that student gets ahead.
Right. The result is no auditors. They don't produce new auditors. At best, old auditors can complete their certainty course and continue auditing, but new auditors are not made anymore.
What were you were saying something about PDSSP course? You were saying something about the PDSSP course when I interrupted because I turned the light off.
Yeah, it was about the reference HCOB 10 August 73, which orients you finally to look for an SP in your own family, because you are asked what is your problem stemming from PDSness. Let's say you have a stomach ache. Yeah? So when you have a stomach ache, when did this start? Oh, that goes back very early when I was 6. Yeah, who was around you when you were 6? That's your family and not someone in Scientology. So you always look for an SP in your childhood, in your family, and never look for the SP who is now, today, suppressing you and re-stimulating your stomach engram. And that's very obvious how tech. It's illogical. It violates the Dianetic approach. By Dianetic, 70% of all illnesses stem from engrams. So you would audit engram chains, not look for an SP. Makes no sense. The SP is just restimulating something, but he can only restimulate engram chains. If they are not there, he can talk as long as he wants. He would not restimulate me. So the final solution is not getting rid of SPs. The final solution is to get clear, so that there are no reactive banks.
Yeah, that's what makes the SP seem to have power, because it just restimulates people. Like David Miscavige, he'll restimulate fear in people. You know, he stirs up their case and their fear, and then he can control them because they've gone low-toned and stuff. But that's where he gets his power from, restimulating them. And they learn little mechanisms and stuff of how to, like little habits that keep people in and stuff. And yeah.
There are always SPs around. But together with their DBs, degraded beings, they make 20 or 25% of the population. So you can't get rid of these people. But you can become clear, so they can't hurt you anymore. You can confront them, havingness about them, and can handle them. But the church turns it around and tells you that you should disconnect from every SP, especially from everyone which is declared SP by HCO. Another way where not your self-determinism is accepted. Not they expect me to disconnect from persons which they declare as an SP, and not people where I recognize that they are SPs. It's a very different viewpoint.
So
they always think in pyramids. The SPs, they want to create pyramidal
structures,
hierarchies, where from one position they can control everything.
Yeah.
So they want to bring you into the situation that you obey orders.
Yeah.
But the policies of LH are not about obeying orders. They are about hedging, that you know what your hedge is and you do it in your self-determinism. You are just judged by your product. Do you get the products of your post or not? And if you do, no one is allowed to bypass you and tell you what to do.
Yeah, the SPs are never going to do a job like woodwork, where it's just them in a room making something, or sowing wheat or something where it's just them sowing wheat. They always seem to gravitate towards areas where they get to influence other people, where they're either teaching other people or they're in control of other people, you know, or they're the boss. They're just always into affecting other people around them and controlling them and manipulating them. So with LRH, apparently he went to New York in late 1972?
Right, 3rd December 72.
Okay.
But that's just a story we have to believe. We don't know anything about this.
Okay.
There's a good book out there. It's called Watergate Hoax. You have heard about this?
Yeah, I've read some of it.
Scientologist. And he questions this story about LH's flight to New York and about the prior Morocco projects. And I can totally agree. It's totally bullshit to believe that LAH would deliver sex checking to King Hassan III, I think, the Moroccan dictator and fascist, so Islamist. So it's real that this would explode is was not just a risk, it was sure from the beginning. If you would deliver sex checking into such a military and secret service area, that would fly around your ears like an explosion, would fly into your face. So that would be a big stupidity to do this. And we should believe that LAH entered this project, supported this project to deliver meter training to militarists and to secret service of Morocco, and then had to flee the country and to fly to New York. It's all bullshit. He was gone in July 1972, and after this it's just a cover-up. A cover story to explain what happened to LH. And 1 year later, we are told that he came back and could not explain what he did and where he was. In the church, this 9 missing months are never even mentioned. We have to believe the stories which we read in anti-Scientology books by critics. So why should we base our data on this public relation, black PR against Ron and against Scientology? It's a swamp. If you enter this kind of data, you end up nowhere. We should just base our evaluations on hard facts. And hard facts are the photos of LH, are the lecture we can listen to, are his technology, his bulletins, and later revised bulletins, which we can evaluate whether they are in agreement with the Scientology basics, the axioms, or not, whether they violate them, whether we have a very easy measure for the tech, brings the tech, the tone scale up or brings it down. We are told the quote by Diana Hubbard, if it is no fun, it is not Scientology. It's a very true sentence. Because Scientology it's from the second book, The Science of Survival. LH said, everything which brings you up the tone scale is valid processing. So, and what we experience in the church is it brings us down the tone scale. All the suppression, the evaluation, the indications, they bring us down the tone scale. So that's black tech, not white.
So, with this Watergate hoax book, because I haven't finished and I'm just wondering if you could tell me what was the conclusion of Watergate and LRH being abducted? What is the idea that he's trying to get across in this book?
The main thing, what I took out of the book, I was not interested in Watergate and Nixon and so on. But what I got out was the viewpoint about LH, and that all the story about Morocco and delivering training to King Hassan, that this is a cover story. It's not true. There is no paper trail about this. We have no issues, no lectures of LH about this. So the last lectures we get from LH were in the first half of the year 72. And the valid tech is expanded Dianetics. And he worked on this until June 72. Yeah. And after, even in December 72, it started a big series of HCOBs, confessional series. So the confessionals were reinstituted were put again there. Although LH already had given up the confessional check. He said it doesn't work. What we intended with it to find out who is an enemy in our lines does not work. So he gave it up. There's a good website about this by Michael Snook, Wise Old Goat, and he made research on this confessional tech. It was once created by LH and then put down. He decided to give it up. And then in December 72, 20 new issues reinstated the confessional tech, because this is a very good tech to suppress Scientologists. The takeover team is very interested in getting all your overs, because they can control you with your faults.
Yeah.
Show you this may fall. Here's an overt, and here you failed.
The keys you in.
Every small thing is used to kill you. So they need the confessional tech, but not, it's not useful to find enemies, because an SP is not revealing himself at the meeting. They don't have a conscience. They don't read on a meter with their overs. Just the good guys who read on the meter with their overs.
So what about people like Janice Gilham, who were around on the Polo and stuff, who say that they were being messages for LRH after 72?
Yes. I think all this messenger thing is a big fake too. Because the stable data LH gave us regarding policy and also regarding orders is, if it is not written, it's not true. So why should he use messenger and tell them what to say and send them out and hope that they could duplicate him and tell the same thing to the target and get the answer and hope that the messenger will duplicate the answer and tell it to LH? It's a stupid idea. It violates the principle of, if it is not written, it's not true. Why not write down an order and send it to the paper? I think these messengers are just introduced via to hide the fact that LH is not there anymore and was replaced by a doppelganger and a ghostwriter and someone who could pose his speech, can speak in a way like LH. I think it was a big crew. Imitating LH. It's not just a single person, of course.
So
and they had to get rid of the traffic to LH, so they put bias into it to avoid that person can approach LH anymore.
So the fiction books were released, and I assume not scribbled. So is it just because Scientology was the threat and they don't care about LIH's fiction, so they're happy to release LIH's fiction in the 80s, but when it comes to the actual tech, they had to wreck the tech, so they scribbled the tech. Is that right?
Yeah. The purpose was to get rid of clears and OTs. And they were very successful in this. No clears and OTs anymore since the end of the 70s. The only way to become clear is a clearing course. Ron makes it very clear in the booklet, the introduction to the clearing course. He said no earlier tech was ever able to hit even a hole into the basic bank. Basic, which is addressed in the clearing course. These are the GPMs which are also mentioned on the student head tapes. Today, we are taught that the reactive bank consists of locks, secondaries, and engrams. That's what you find in the tech dictionary. Locks, secondaries, engrams make the reactive bank. That is not true. The earlier definition by LIH is locks, secondaries, engrams, and GPMs make the reactive bank. The basic of the reactive bank are GPMs. And the basic is addressed in the clearing course. And only if you audit it with the clearing course, you can become clear.
When did they change it so that you could go clear without having to do the clearing course? What year?
78. With the new aerodynamics. They said new aerodynamics is so good that you can become clear on NED. And that is a lie, because NED is not so different. It's an earlier tech from the viewpoint of the clearing course, and Ron said expressly, no earlier tech was ever able to hit a hole into the basic bank. So this also is true for NED. NED cannot. I was, as a PC, I once ran the basic bank, the basic, in Dynetics. I also had PCs who run this stuff. But this does not erase. It's not possible in a few sessions of Dynetics to erase this bank by running through it with Dynetics. It needs a year or two to erase this basic bank on the clearing course in Solid. Just with the platens, Ron gave us platens which describe this GPMs, and we take it again and again every day. You audit an hour on this pattern and get rid of a lot of tone arm action. And finally, after a year or two, it all vanishes, it erases, and you are free. You are clear. And the idea that this can be done today on objectives or TRs or Dynetics, it's foolish. It's cheating. And that's the only way to destroy Scientology, by telling you already achieved it. I gave you the CCRD. Look at the technology of the CCRD. It's a way to destroy Scientology. To tell you achieve clear. If it is not so, then the person knows it's all cheating. I've been misused again. I asked for help and it was fake. Just nice talk of LH about clear and all the abilities of a clear, and now I'm told I'm clear, although I'm still drinking alcohol every week. Need the alcohol to get a key out.
So CCRD is making people think that they're clear, and it's like giving them, even though they're uncertain about being clear, they do the CCRD, and then they feel like, oh yeah, I am clear. So it's like brainwashing them. Do you think that that's the case?
Yeah, it's not a brainwashing because it does not suggest that you are clear, but the tech is just a rehab of a former release. That it is what technically the CCRD does. And the earlier version of the CCRD, it was invented in '78, is the DCSI, the Dynetics Clear Certainty Intensive, DCSI. That was a forerunner of the CCRD. But basically, both have the same tech. The tech is a rehabilitation of the former release. So the technology goes like this. They ask you, did you ever have the idea that you went clear? And then the person says, yeah, it was my first Dianetic session when I run my past life and run over the... And I had such a key out. And it was marvelous, and I was in the clouds, and uptone and everything was great. And I was large as a house, as a skyscraper. So they orient you on this, and then they ask, and what did it key in? Was there any invalidation of being clear? Yes, I was told by the supervisor that this is not possible. In the first session, you need much more service. And I could agree. And so after this, I didn't feel so good anymore. This moment, and rehab it by orienting you on the key out and orienting you on the key in, and do it alternately, like you learn it in grade 3, which is like a class 3. As a class 3 auditor, you learn to rehab the key out. And after a while, the PC feels great again. It's this key out again, this big key out. And at this moment, the CS asks you, do you want to attest clear? So you think, if the CS asked me this, it must be true. So you clear.
No, this is just confirming what I thought, where it's taking someone who's just had a moment where they released from the bank. They're not clear, they just had a moment where they've released from the bank, and it's getting them to attest to clear and say that they're clear, and for them to be certain about that. It does sound quite shifty.
Yeah, it's just a rehabilitation of a release, technically. It has nothing to do with clear or not clear. It's just a rehab. It's nice, we feel fine, a rehab is a good thing, but has nothing to do with clear. It's cheating. Because after a while, every release will unrelease, and you lose it. And if you reduce the bridge to just releases, to just key outs, then this is cheating to the people. You take all the money, you take all the effort and their time, and after a few years, they lose it all. And just feel the loss of all the money and time, and then they are running around and say Scientology is a big
scam.
Yes, that's Betrug. It's fake. They just take your money. They are just money motivated. I have nothing after all. That's because the bridge today is just about releases, not all the things which erase have been taken out. That's the standard dynamics, and on And the clericals is erasing. Then on OT2, they erase a lot of things. It's the biggest level on the whole bridge, OT2. You need a few years to go to all these 24 of GPMs. And this is done quickly today. I know no Scientology exists who has been longer than 2 weeks on the OT2. 2 weeks instead of 2 years. It's quickly. They don't know even that there are 20 GPMs. They just do a bit auditing on 1 GPM or 2 or 3. Then they use the first win, the first key out to attest it. That's not what LH wrote about the EP on OT2. He wrote no charge left on all the 20 or 26 on GPMs.
Yeah,
you can only get rid of the tech. You can only get rid of the charge if you audit it.
Yeah, I know they've quickied the grades with GAT2 now. Have you had a chance to look into GAT2?
No.
Okay.
No.
So, what do you think of solo knots then? Because there was something released in '78, wasn't it? And was it solo knots?
Yes, the beginning of it. The beginning of knots goes back to '78 because the decision was to get rid of Dynetics for OTs, for clears and OTs. And that is a big fault. You need Dynetics to get through OT3. Without Dynetics, you cannot achieve the EP of OT3. That's the reason why people who started in the 70s or 80s on the OT levels are still struggling with the same case. Because they don't apply Dynetics.
So, do you approve of people using solo knots, but also using Dynetics?
Solo knots is not from LH. It was made by David Mayo. And David Mayo finally revealed himself as an enemy of Scientology. And he was one of the founders of RTC. So why should I base my bridge on a product of a person like David Mayo who ended critical of LH and Scientology?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he ended up being critical of LH and Scientology, and his centers didn't last. They closed down.
Yeah. So I think knots is just a method to get rid of the original OT levels.
Interesting.
The original OT levels are OT 4, 5, 6, and 7. And OT 1, 2, 3 are the pre-OT levels. And our enemy, the deep state, don't want any OTs. So they had to get rid of the OT 4 to 7.
Yep.
This was done by establishing knots and putting knots instead, and call it a new OT4, new OT5, new OT6, new OT7. But it has nothing new. It's just knots and put into 4 parts and replacing. It's this weird method of division, revising the tech.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done solo knots, but why is it sort of got this famousness to it? Solo knots.
What's the question?
Well, solo knots has a bit of famousness to it, like solo knots. Like why has it sort of got this attention?
Because because if people can't get through, it's just key out. They key out their case again and again since 40 years now, and can't get rid of the case because they don't use the right tool, and the right tool is Dianetics. There are parts of the case where you need Dianetics to get rid of it, and as they avoid the only tool, which is the correct one, they can't complete it. So they are on solo knots since 40 years. They started in 80. They started in 19 and they are on solo knots since 30 years.
What do you think about this idea of LRH being abducted?
Perhaps, whatever he ended up, I don't know. Perhaps he also had better things to do, more important things, and went away to take up another job because he couldn't hold the position in Scientology. Scientology was heavily undermined and taken over. First in Scientology, already in the 60s was Scientology taken over, and when he had to leave Scientology due to his visa was not allowing. Got now visa to stay in England. So the way was free for the takeover team to control Scientology. And he mentions the result, 1970, in his new issue of the policy KSW1, keeping Scientology word number one. He says, he told us about the quickie grades, which nearly destroyed Scientology. And these quickie grades were introduced in Scientology, where he was not there anymore. Instead of auditing a few intended zips on every grade, it was done in a few sessions. The same we have today in the church, often in the free zone as well. To audit just the main process of every grade, and then you have the EP and go on.
Oh, I just want to make something clear in case someone's questioning the facts. When I say that GAT2 is quickie the grades, they haven't made them so that you do them in 2 hours. They've made them so that you don't do all the full processes to the full EP, and you just do them faster than what you're supposed to do them, but they're not done in 2 hours. I just want to clear that up.
Yeah, it was in the late 60s when it was done in 2 hours. I don't know what they do today. I just know how it was postulated by LH 1970. That's a bridge I base on my deck. Is the bridge issued by Flag in 1970. And there on this bridge, on this chart, every single process is mentioned expressly on the chart. And Ron insisted and said every single process is audited without exception.
Ah, yeah. So if someone goes clear on grade 1 or something, it means you still have to do the clearing course and everything, and all the other grades.
Right. And also, for example, grade 2 consists of, I think, 30 processes. You have to audit all the 30 processes on this grade. Even if you think you achieved the EP of this grade, that doesn't matter. You continue with the other processes.
I agree, because when I got into Scientology, this was like a few years before they released GAT2. Yeah, when I heard about this thing of people skipping things and stuff, I just thought, whoa, this seems... I don't know if I was involved in Scientology in my past life and I remember, but just my knowingness was just like, no, this is wrong. You're supposed to do all these things and do them properly. And, yeah, to me, I just viewed it a lot like karate training or something where you do each step and then you finally achieve like the black belt or something. You can't just go skipping things. Or you can't just say, oh, I feel like I'm clear or something like that. Because wasn't it in the 80s people could just say something like, oh, I feel like I've got the EP to OT3 and then they can just... Is that true? They can just attest to OT3? I heard there was a period where you could actually just voice what you felt like you were at and then you could get given that.
I once got an offer on eBay to buy a black belt of the karate dojo. So, but I think one has to train a lot so that gives you a new value to wear this black belt. The same in Scientology. It doesn't matter whether you attest something or not. The only thing which matters is do you got the wins or not. There's a lot of case game available. Either you confront the case, and as is the case, so that you gain the wins. For example, the main criteria for a case game is tone arm action. And there's a table, Ron put up a table on tone arm action and said if in a standard session of 2.5 hours you get 25 TAA, tone arm action, this is excellent, 25 or above. If you get 20, it's good. If you get 15, it is acceptable, and so on, until said below 5, it is harmful. So that is a very important bulletin about this scale of tone arm action per session, and most auditors don't know about this reference and don't apply it. And I often saw session admins with less than 5 TA action. Less than 5 TA action in 2.5 hours means it's harmful. It stimulates more than it erases. That's the main statistic of a CS, is the TA action summed up on all his auditors. The CSing. And that is the most important statistic on the auditing. And a lot of people don't know. And when I was on the PTSSP course in Hamburg in the 90s, I read a reference about an SP, that SP doesn't have any TA action. And as I am an engineer, I know there is no absolute zero, there is no absolute no, and as an auditor, you know that some TA action already comes up if you strap the cans and do some body motion with cans. It will give you some TA action. So I asked my supervisor what means no TA action, what is the limit? And he said, I don't know, I'm not an auditor, but you can ask an HGC auditor, he's studying next to us. So I was allowed to ask him, and I asked him, what is no TA action? And he couldn't answer this too. So I asked him, what is your average TA action, what you produce in a session? And he told me the average TA action he got is about 3 or 4 TA action per session. That was the lead auditor of the Hamburg Org HEC, Hamburg Org, which was central size and best number 1 org of the world, the birthday game. And he was best one, auditing 55 hours per week in the chair. And he got not even 5 TA action per session.
And what year was that?
It's outtake. If you apply black tech, not workable tech, you don't get the TA action. And if you are on the right path and use LH tech, you get a lot of TA action.
What year was that?
50 or 70 TA action per session in Dynetics. It's not unusual.
Yeah, what year did that happen?
Yeah, they changed the tech and got rid of such an clear indicator about whether you apply your right tech or not, like the TA action table.
No. What year did this person from Hamburg get this low TA action?
That was 93.
Okay, I imagine it'll probably be even lower after GAT1, because GAT1 was a real mess up of the tech, wasn't it?
Right, yeah. Yeah, with the redefinition of FM, this bullshit. So they had to overrun every process and rehab it again. And they spend more time on repairs than on auditing.
Yeah, and they spend a lot of time on sec checks as well.
Yeah, that's important. So that David Miscavige knows about your overs. He can control you and invalidate you and put you in a lower condition.
I don't want to go into confidential data about OT3, but there is some sort of story that goes around on the internet. It sounds pretty out there. I know about aliens and the truth about this universe and that sort of stuff. So for me to believe it is fine, because I assume there's a lot of wild stuff going on, you know.
Right.
What did you find that the OT3 idea that's circulating on the internet, like that's true? That you find it's true?
The problem is, I'm not from this planet. I arrived here a few hundred years ago to help mankind, as many other Scientologists too. We are not from this planet, so we don't have...
You can say that again.
Our own track, so I can't answer it from my track. I just know that OT3 works, that you can get rid of the charge.
Okay.
But there is a book called Revolt in the Stars. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I've read this. I've read the movie script.
Yes, this movie script, Revolt in the Stars. And the idea behind this was to publish the backstory, the story about what happened 75 million years ago, and publish it to mankind, so that mankind destimulates on OT3. That was the idea. And this film was actually was produced in Hollywood a few decades ago and became the best-selling film of all times. You know the name?
No.
Based on Revolt from the Stars. It's called Star Wars. You heard of Star Wars?
Yeah.
The best-selling Hollywood production ever.
Yeah.
The Star Wars story is the story of OT3.
Well, I've watched the Star Wars movie and I haven't noticed that.
Yeah,
Well, no. Well, hold on a second. They were written about a similar time. They were written at a similar time, right? But yeah, it's that same, like the Jedi thing. It's similar to the loyal officers in Revolt in the Stars. And I mean, yeah, I know the Star Wars story is true. And
Right.
that's just a fiction story based on real stuff that's going on.
Our history. That's why it became so famous, because it indicates to a lot of
Yes,
people. And
yes.
they say,
That's why you get those people that are obsessed with Star Wars and they're like Star Wars nerds, because that it indicates to them and they just go, oh my god, and it reminds them of all this stuff in their past and they love it.
yeah, right.
I mean, there are people who have
idea of LAH to publish this history, and obviously he found someone who wrote a good book for it and made the movie, but he was not a Scientologist. He was just a friend of LAH and got the idea, took the idea and worked it out, and it was a big success.
Do you have like first-hand information on that, or like?
No. This, the funny thing in Star Wars is that it started with the film number 4, and number 5, number 6, and then they went back and published number 1, number 2, number 3. That was the last one they had shown to us. And only in the number 3 it became obvious that it is similar to the OT3 story. And that reveals why it was such a weird sequence that they started with 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. Why? It's just to keep the secret, the withhold, to back until the latest moment.
Yeah, I've got to rewatch those movies because they've just got some truth in them. So they're, I never was into fiction until I realized there was a lot of fiction out there that's actually true, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Apparently, that's got a lot of truth in it. And it does. I mean, I've watched it and I know about the abduction phenomenon and stuff, and it's got a lot of truthful information in it. What do you know about? Do you know anything about Saturn? Because do you know how there's in Star Wars there's that Death Star or something, and it looks like one of the moons of Saturn.
Yeah, I think we have to confront Saturn. Saturn.
No, Saturn. Oh,
Satan.
Yeah.
You mean Satan, the opposite god?
No. Saturn, the planet. The planet, because there's apparently a moon of Saturn that looks like the Death Star on Star Wars.
No idea.
Oh, okay. Anyway, it's an interesting thing to look for, because you see the movie and then you see the moon in real life and you're like, well, that movie's got to be referring to the moon in real life, in Saturn. Just out of curiosity, with your backtrack, have you been choosing to reincarnate here so that you're like, because you're continuing your mission?
Right. Yeah, I started my mission in the 18th century here on Earth.
And what's the end game? Because I'm probably the same. And what is it? Will we pretty much be just continue here until there's a time when we feel like we are ready to move on to somewhere else?
Right. Yeah. The purpose is to free mankind from this prison planet.
Can you
is a prison planet, and it is not acceptable anymore for the Galactic Confederacy that people are held in prison, and this reactive mind which spreads from here into the galaxy. So we have to clear this up and free mankind. At least the decent people who can reform, who have TA action, and case win and become ethical and acceptable for the civilization.
So is the whole physical universe, right, like a matrix prison, and within that Earth is also a prison planet, right? Or is it just that the Earth is a prison planet and the other planets are all cool, but Earth is a prison planet?
Good question.
Because
one should find out.
Because there's an idea that the Earth, but also there's this idea that the Earth is like fake or some sort of matrix, but it's just the Earth. And it might have something to do with Saturn, but it's really, really deep. But anyway, I think we'll find out one day.
Yeah, I think Earth is really a special situation. It's more suppressive than what is usual.
Yeah, I think so. And I was thinking the other day, because I've been looking into the UFO phenomenon so much, and it's so secret, and it seems like from the good side of the Force, they're also quite secret. And I was thinking, hold on a second, this could be because there is a what's it called, a galactic treaty that is like some sort of non-interference, which is you're supposed to not be involved with these developing civilizations, right? And that would explain for why the good guys, the bad guys, and the whatevers in betweens are just all keeping their involvement secret.
Right. That is so.
Yeah, so that's why I can prescribe to the Confederacy idea, because I feel like the bad implanters and the good guys also are stuck with this treaty thing, and the implanters don't want to start some sort of war or something, so they're trying to like do all this shifty stuff and secretly doing mind control, and they have to keep secret.
Right. I agree.
Does the prison planet pretty much work by the whole Between Lives area incident?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether this still exists for mankind, this Between Life implant. It might still work just as a restimulation. If you leave your body and realize you are dead, perhaps just by remembering an earlier similar incident, you get stimulated, although there's not anymore a working installation like this. Perhaps they are all destroyed already.
Have you personally ran the incident of the Between Lives area?
Yes, for myself and a lot of PCs who were not introduced to the concept. I ordered a lot of green persons, non-Scientology persons, even people who didn't even expect a past life to run. And a lot of them ran into the Between Life implant. But these are usually many decades ago and not the current situation. So perhaps the current situation for people dying today could be different. There is no implant station available for them.
Well, this would explain for some of these indigo children that are being born that are quite advanced beings, and the wogs out there are getting a bit thrown off by these little OTs that are being born or something. This is really exciting, Andreas. Can you go over what happens in the between lives area?
You get implanted and forced to reincarnate, whether you want it or not.
What does the implant involve? Because I think there's different information that LRH has released on it, where earlier he said this is what happened, and then I think later he says this is what happens. Am I right in saying that?
No, what happens is actually just a re-stimulation of earlier implants. We have been implanted in the very early track, the GPNs, which are addressed in clearing course and OT2. And these just have to be re-stimulated. That's also the reason why hypnosis works on 22% of the people. It's just a re-stimulation of older implants.
But what
you just have to steer them and give them an inflow or circle, and immediately they are in this mood or in this are re-stimulated. And in the old implants, and have to obey and do whatever you want.
Yes, but what does the Between Lives incident involve? I heard there might be a chair and mirrors and then fake facsimiles that you think are yours but aren't really yours, and some sort of life review. And I know people talk about seeing Jesus and Buddha or something. Is that right?
That was so on the whole track. You find such implants. But I think in the last 1,000 years on Earth, they had much easier ones. You know that there are pyramids in every country and continent. And in these pyramids you find graves and bodies. And in these bodies you find metal. And if you put into a flesh body two different kinds of metal, like copper and silver, between these electrodes there would be running a current, an electrical current. And from the viewpoint of a thetan, of a free thetan, a pyramid would look like a light. The light would come out of the pyramid, would attract you, that you go towards its light. So if you leave the body, you are dying, leaving the body, you see the light at the end of the tunnel, go there and end up in a pyramid. And in this pyramid you find a body. So you go into the body and think that might be yours. You have to make him live again, life. So you go into this body, but in this body a current is flowing because someone put some nails into it, a copper nail and a silver nail. You find a lot of bodies around the world with nails in them. And it's explained that this is an old ceremony.
You there, Andreas? You there? Oh, looks like you're... Sorry, yeah, cut out. You have to say that again.
A lot of bodies you can find today old bodies have nails in them. And it is explained that this is the way how to kill a vampire. You put a silver nail into his heart so that the vampire is finally killed. And if you put a second nail into his foot, for example, or his belly, a copper one or iron one, then there would flow an electrical current between one and the other electrode. And that would flow for hundreds, if not 1,000 years. So you could use this dead body to capture thetans and implant them again.
All right.
You find them around the world, everywhere in China, in Latin America, you find pyramids.
And there might even be one in Australia.
Pyramids are rooms and bodies are buried. These are not kings necessarily, it's just the explanation, because it's such a big building, must be the grave of a king. But who knows who this was? I think it's just the body the priests use to catch thetans. Like in the movie Psychbuster. You know the movie Psychbuster?
No.
No?
What is it?
Take a look at this movie, Psychbuster.
Is it PSY, Psych?
Psych, like psychiatry.
Sounds like a good name for a movie.
Ghostbuster was the name, no? Ghostbuster.
Oh, I mean Ghostbusters. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Not Psychbuster, it was Ghostbuster.
But Psychbuster's a good name for a movie.
Electrical currents to catch the thetans, the ghosts.
Yeah, interesting, yeah.
Because if you get the ghost into your electrodes so that you give them electrical current, then they can't move again. Then you have them caught. You can fixate them like this. The same technique applied in the pyramids. If you just take a human body, a dead human body, and put two electrodes into it, an electrical current will run from one to the other. And if a thetan goes into the body thinking it might be his, he would be caught for a while. And that will re-stimulate old implants. So there's no need for a screen and video anymore, because this was already done a few billion years ago. It just needs a re-stimulation.
Yeah, yeah. So when you ran Between Lives incidents, this is the sort of data that would be coming up?
Yes. Things similar like this. Yeah.
Okay, and...
You just learn Dianetic Book 1 to apply on new people, and don't give them an R factor that you are going to run past lives. You just tell them, like in the Dianetic book, it's about this lifetime. And then you run earlier, similar. So you finally come up with a past life, and then you run this past life across the death. Continue over the death. And you will run into such an implant situation. It's all the same with every piece. So there is truth in it. It's not because LH said us so and we expected this. No, even people who don't know about this, they have the same experience.
So...
And that is the thing which we all agree upon.
So, after running this incident, are people then able to easily remember their previous lifetime, or what?
Yeah, usually they can.
Okay.
If you get the charge of this lifetime off, first you release the charge available on this lifetime, and then usually it's quite easy to go earlier and release the charge there.
Okay, and what about, this is really out there, but is time in a linear fashion where you go back the previous lifetime and it goes back perfectly in time, or is it a bit weird where you can go to a past life? Hold on, I'll say it again. Can you have had a past life in the 40s as one person and then also have had a past life in the 40s as another person?
Yes, per LH, this is possible. I have no own experience in this, but LH told us so in the tapes. Was it? Time Track of Theta, I think, was a small series of 4 tapes or so. And there he said that it is possible for a Thetan to have several bodies and control several bodies. Or you could run the track of the Thetan in one session, and on the other session you run the track of your G genetic entity. And there are even more entities in every person. There are a lot of tracks you can run depending on the running item you are starting with. If you start with a body trouble somehow, it may be on the GE line and not on the Thetan line, on the Thetan track.
Okay, so let's cross out GE lines and entity lines, right? You've got one Thetan. Can that Thetan actually split itself up and be occupying 2 bodies at the same time? Do you think that's possible?
I just read or listened to the tapes of LH. He said so. So I would accept this as true. But I have no personal observation supporting this.
Okay, yeah, because I can prescribe to this because I'm aware of evidences for parallel universes, right? And I'm aware of moving between parallel universes. So I'm talking to one version of Joe in one universe. Then I go into the other one and I'm talking to this Joe again in this other slightly different parallel universe. And it seems to be the same Thetan that's just occupying 2 universes.
Okay.
Do you know much about the Mandela effect?
I once looked a few hours videos about it. I'm not sure whether there's something in it.
Well, I reckon there's something to it, and what will happen is that there'll be a group of people, a significant percentage of the population, who will say, I remember that the Ford car logo used to look like this, right? And now magically it's changed, right? And people say it's because the universes are combined, right? But not everyone thinks that the Ford logo has changed. So, this Ford logo one's true for me, right? So that means that, let's say I ask you, do you think the Ford logo has changed? And you don't think the Ford logo has changed. You're like, no, it's always been the way it is now. That means that when I spoke to you, say, 10 years ago, prior to the universes merging, I was talking to a different version of you. Do you know what I mean? Because in my universe 10 years ago when the Ford logo was different, right, there was all these different versions of all the people in them. I noticed this with my mum because there was a Mandela effect about a road in the area, right? And my brother remembered it the way I remembered it, right? But my mum didn't. Mum was like, "No, it's always been like this," right? She didn't say no. She didn't say no. I don't remember. She goes, "No, it's always been like this." So that means that years ago, me and my brother were talking to a different version of my mum than we are today. So that to me makes me think that a Satan can be split up into parallel universes.
This is so. I don't know.
What
my mind to this theory.
What do you have any good data on God then, and what God is?
God. Yeah. I think there's a hierarchy of gods. Gods above gods. That's for every entity you need some Satan ruling this entity. So here in Switzerland we know that in every mountain there's a being controlling this mountain. Or perhaps we have an entity controlling planet Earth, or one entity controlling the solar system. So there might be gods above gods.
How can there be a god controlling a mountain in Sweden? Did you say, or Switzerland?
Yeah, Switzerland. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you're in Switzerland.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right. That's sorry. When you first said before the interview started, I thought you said Sweden, and I was kind of getting a little bit confused because I thought, is Sweden in a different time zone?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, anyway, I thought your accent didn't seem Swedish.
Australia different to Austria?
So how can a god control a mountain?
He can control the people climbing up the mountain, whether they survive it or not. Better you create first ARC with this being before you climb the mountain.
Yeah. Have you noticed this happening to people and stuff?
I'm not climbing mountains, so I don't have to find any agreement first, but I think it would be a good idea.
What
I try to agreement with a Satan who is controlling my car, my automobile. Perhaps there's a Satan in it.
Really?
And if I talk about buying a new one, he's very ARC broken.
Really? Is that someone who's being objects on the tone level? They're being objects?
Perhaps there are no objects without any life force in it.
Yeah, so you basically think that the Satan that's involved with your car is their tone level would be being objects, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so with Mission Earth, do you think that that's pretty much, a lot of truth in Mission Earth, or what?
Yes. It's Ron's last message to us.
Yeah.
I think also a hidden message in it.
And what's that?
I will tell you later. Prepare this. I'm considering writing a book about the hidden message.
A whole book about the hidden message in Mission Earth?
Yes.
Wow, that sounds good.
Perhaps you can find it yourself.
You've already.
Ron intended that his friends find this message.
Yeah, I'm sure because I've listened to the audiobooks. But that was like 33% of the story. It was condensed and it was great and it was good acting. But I could tell that, hold on a second, I've got to read the books, and I'm only on the first volume. But I know that there's some serious intel in those books.
Yes, that's right. There are a lot of levels in it. Even to get some auditing by LH through reading this book.
Yeah.
LH is auditing you, and you will be getting rid of some case.
I think the reason Mission Earth isn't as popular as it should be is because LRH had put out so many materials before it that people are just too busy with those other materials to get into Mission Earth.
Right. Yeah, that's a very important work, and no doubt it is by LRH, not from someone else.
If I found out about
also has a lot of truth in it.
Yeah.
It tells us about.
If I found out the meaning of this Mission Earth prior to reading it, would it ruin the reading the story?
Didn't got the question.
Well, if you told me the meaning of the Mission Earth books prior to me reading them, will it wreck the experience of reading the books? I'll say it again. So you said that there's a secret meaning behind the Mission Earth books,
yes.
Right? So if you told me them, and then I went to go read the books, would it make the experience not as good?
No, I don't think so. It will not destroy anything.
So it's not going to ruin the storyline or anything?
No.
Okay.
There are a lot of parallel storylines in it. It's a fascinating book.
What do you think of Oh, sorry. Can I quickly go? What's your Scientology history?
I started in Scientology in 1987. After I bought the book from my wife. It was on a festival, on a spiritual festival, and I have been a Reiki master before Scientology, and read the book and was so fascinated that I made an excerpt, wrote the essential technique of Dianetics in 12 pages. And with these 12 pages in my lap, I gave the first session to a friend of mine. And she immediately ended up in a past life where she was tortured. So that was very impressive. So I looked up the address of the orc in the book and contacted the orc and said I want a session for myself, and got my first session there, and took a look in my past lives, which was very free in my mind, realizing that I'm an eternal being. So I decided to become a professional auditor. It started with an own practice and audited hundreds of people. Gave up my computer job and just worked as an auditor.
So you worked as a field auditor? As a field auditor?
Yes, field auditor. And in parallel, I took the HES course, the COM course at New York, and then later the HQS course, and started the academy. I studied about 40 courses on New York until they threw me out in 1999.
And why'd you leave? And why'd they throw you out?
Because I wrote too many reports about all the altars in the church, all the misapplication of LH, the suppressive understanding of Scientology.
And you were...
They made a sect out of Scientology.
And this was at Hamburg org, was it?
Yes. And I was a top FSM of this org. My wife and me, we started 220 people on Scientology, new people. So we have been awarded the top international FSM plaque.
Cool. And then after that, you did independent Scientology?
Yes. And I started my independent practice in 2000 and studied the academy again and found a lot of outpoints in the material. I found out the whole bridge is destroyed. Every single level of the bridge is destroyed.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm currently a small booklet. Now I have 55 pages on it, but I'm not completed. We'll publish this in the near future, where I explain for every single grade and class of the bridge how the original was and what they made out of it, and how they destroyed Scientology. And this is not only so for the church, it's also for the independent auditors. They usually are very proud to tell that they have the same tech as in the church, what they call standard tech. And yeah, that's a trap. RTC already took over in 72 and changed the tech until 78. So every Scientologist delivering the standard tech is delivering black tech, black Scientology. That's the reason why it does not expand. We have a long-term emergency trend, not only in the church, but also in the free zone field. The stats are going down and down and down. And, we don't confront the earlier beginning of 72 of our third dynamic engram, then we will not save Scientology. So my purpose is, my message is, it can be saved, it can be rehabilitated, expand again, but we have to go back to the original and not the fake Scientology. That's what my blog is about. There are hundreds of articles. I wrote over 1,000 pages research on all the altars in Scientology. And if you read this, you can get back the original.
So
put the address of my blog in to this video. So
yes, I'll put the link in. But you could also search the original Scientology 1972 and it'll probably come up, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what independent Scientology orgs do have the original tech?
know of no or delivering the original.
Do you deliver? Are you auditing people at the moment?
No, I concentrate on the research and publication so that it becomes available. If I would audit professionally, as I had done before, then I wouldn't have time for the research. I want to put all the information. Also, for example, the policies are totally destroyed and turned around, made black. Or the ethics system. For example, they introduced a new ethics condition called confusion, which did not exist under LH. And with this confusion condition, they can indicate this to every Scientologist and say, you are in confusion, accept it, and by this, he is happy to come up the condition and end up in treason or enemy, which is quite weird to most Scientologists. But they accept it because LH said so. From one condition you go up to the next. And as confusion is below treason, that's the way how you put Scientologists into treason. Without this confusion condition, no one would accept to be in treason or an enemy because he is not. These lower conditions have been developed by LH for real enemies, for agents, for CIA agents or MI6 or Mossad or whatever, KGB or FSB or all they are called. And because a lot of such agents are in Scientology, have always been in Scientology. So this is the offer for these agents to come up the conditions and become true Scientologists. By accepting and realizing they are in treason as a feature to Scientology, because they are working for the enemy. So they realize they are enemies, and then in doubt they have to find out, should I stay to CIA or should I become a Scientologist? Which group is more pro-survival? And decide in doubt which side they want to join and make it public to both sides. And then in liability they have to make good what they have done to Scientology, make amends, and communicate to all members and say, do you accept me now as a true Scientologist after all what I have done? And if most of them agree, then start in Onyx. But this whole system of the lower condition was created by LH for enemies, for agents, for treasonous people, and not for the usual Scientologists like you and me.
Yeah.
So the only method to get rid of this system by the takeover team was to put another condition, fake condition, called confusion, below treason, and tell you and me and every other people you are in confusion. Sometimes one is in confusion, of course. There exists confusion, but that's not an ethics condition, it's a technical condition. And if you are in the technical condition of the confusion, you apply a tech like an objective, like a locational. Find out where you are now and find out where you have been. That's a technical process. It's auditing, not an ethics condition. And then you come out of this confusion by applying this objective process, and the ethics officer tells you, now, very well done, now you are in treason. And you say, what? I'm in treason? I've never been in treason. I've never been against LH or Scientology or the org. It's not my condition. Yes, you are. Take a look at LH. LH says this is the scale of the conditions, and you have been in confusion, and you applied this condition and came up to the next condition, and now you have to work out the next level. So you work out and try to find out what the treason is. Your enemy. Everyone gets crazy about this and is happy finally if he runs around with this paper with his liability and everyone accepts him. It's just bullshit. The whole process is bullshit. And just introduced to hide the fact that there are real enemies among us in our group.
There's lots of things that, like, you first come across them and they seem not quite right, and then it takes years of collecting data to work out what was really going on and why that was not quite right. Because I'm sure a lot of people, when they were in the church, saw that sort of condition thing and were thinking, what the hell, this doesn't seem quite right. You know what I mean? That person being in enemy or something like that, and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah. That's my purpose, to point out how all these outpoints and also is and revisions. For example, FBO. You know what FBO is? The stuff. What is it?
The Flag Banking Officer?
Yes.
Is it the Flag
Banking Officer?
Yeah.
It's an alter is. The original FBO was a finance banking officer. The finance banking officer, FBO, had to control the money owned by the org. And the flag banking officer controls the money owned by Flag. So the change of the policy from finance banking officer to flag banking officer, which was in the early 70s, was the moment they robbed all the money from the orgs. The new management, the takeover team, took all the money. And we heard about that millions and many $1 million were taken out of the orgs because LH was so greedy and needed so much money in his hiding. But it was not LH. He didn't use this money. Even what they told us about LH was not. He didn't live like a millionaire.
Yeah, exactly.
So why should LH use all these millions? No, that was theft by the deep state, by the CIA, who took control over Scientology. And they took all the $100 million.
Yeah.
And still own the money and take all the money from IRS and the money flow up to in management and RTC and above CST.
Yeah, and by David Miscavige and stuff, and they were going out and gambling, and they were also, I think, putting some money on the stock market or something. And I think it does make a bit of sense that if LRH is old and in hiding, I mean, he can't blow through a lot of money because he's just not in that sort of condition. He was living in a motorhome or whatever. So it is a bit strange, you know, why there were suitcases with $1 million in them going around.
Yeah. It's not strange. It's very obvious. Obvious that the takeover team puts all the money into the pockets.
What about Captain Bill and Ronzorg? Because I think Max Howery follows tech that's from 72, I think.
I hope so, yes. But
Right.
the Captain Bill bridge is, of course, an alter is not acceptable. Why not using the LH bridge? Was never used, never tried.
What do you think about the levels past OT8? Because they weren't released in 72, so what are you supposed to do then?
LH wrote, when was it, that he held back OT7 and 8 until Scientology would be safe and not endangered by the enemy.
Yeah.
So I believe that he ever released and wrote down these levels. OT8 is a pure fake one that never existed in LH OT8.
No, but hold on. I think the policy the bulletin I think you're talking about, it might have been Tech Roundup. Is that right?
Tech Roundup is from the 23rd January of 77. It's not by LH.
Okay, I thought maybe you're quoting Tech Roundup, but I know the one you're talking about. I've heard it, where he says that until the orgs get their act together, he won't release OD7 or OT8.
Yes,
But that implies that he has got the tech. He has written it.
Yes, right. But it would be too dangerous to release it into an org which is nearly controlled by the enemy. It wouldn't give the enemy this tech.
So basically, are you saying that only up until OT6 exists, the tech only stops at OT6?
Yeah, or old OT7 also exists, but not OT8.
Okay, all right. Do you sell Scientology materials on your website? You do, don't you?
No, I don't sell materials.
Do you just sell your books?
What I sell is a Dynetics book. You find it on Amazon. The original Dynetics book from 1950s in German, with all the missing, I think it's 6 chapters are missing today in the Dynetics book. Very important chapters. One chapter, Introduction to the Dynetics book, and a few chapters in the appendix about the scientific method and the diagram of the reactive mind, the analytical mind. This is lost tech, which we don't find in the newer versions of the Dynetics book. So that is one book I recently published and sell through Amazon, but only the German version.
I came across a website though, and I think it was by you, and it looked like it was selling a bunch of Scientology materials, like books and stuff.
Yes, that is my bookshop. But these are materials produced by the church. It's not new produced books. It's old books.
Oh, so second-hand stuff.
Yes.
Okay, and what's the name of that if people want to find it?
It's LH Bookstore, I think, yes. I look it up. I will send this to you.
Yeah, I'll put it in the comments section. Yeah, I'll put a link for it. Are you up for doing a second interview?
Yes.
Okay, because I probably have enough questions for it to go for another hour, but I think it'd be best if we just finish now and then we do another one.
Right. Yeah. I'm happy with this.
Okay, good. What the next one is going to be more about is about CIA, the Illuminati, OSA, and CST.
and QAnon and DJ Trump.
What is QAnon?
I think he is a high-level military intelligence officer, naval intelligence from the Navy, and he's working together with Trump to kill the deep state and the New World Order.
What do mainstream people think QAnon is?
He is a conspiracy theorist.
Okay. I got to look it up. I got to clear this QAnon thing because I've heard it before, but I haven't looked it up.
I will send you a booklet about it for your first information. Very exciting development, I think. Very soon we will get back our Scientology as it has been before, because the US government will release all the original materials in the next years. So we will have a rehabilitation of Scientology.
Yeah, look, my researchers indicate that, yeah, they totally didn't want civilians having this sort of OT ability, you know, because it's something that they want for themselves, just the same as they want an atom bomb for themselves and they want an anti-gravity UFO for themselves. It's
Free
just
energy and so on, yes.
Yeah.
All technology is scanned by the deep state, and they take all the important things for them and leave us the rest.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Scientology, but this area comes to an end. We are at the moment where this suppressive people controlling planet Earth are being handled.
Yeah.
On the planet.
Yeah, I completely agree. A mass awakening is happening. I mean, the amount of people that are switched on to fake news and the Illuminati, like, it's, you know, it is actually happening. People are actually starting to, you know, starting to move out of being in these silly games stuck in a matrix where they're just unaware of nothing, you know. I think they might have the powers that be might have shot themselves in the foot a bit because they released, I think, some heavy attacks on people and stuff, and it started to wake people up because they started to get annoyed. I think that in order to keep people trapped, you want to keep it a bit nice. You want to keep the matrix a bit nice, but I think they did some things like putting chemicals in vaccines and stuff. I think it just woke people up a bit too much because it caused too much damage. And so it's backfiring on them.
Yes.
All right, I'll get going, and thanks for that. And I'll contact you about doing a part 2.
Great. Yeah.
Right.
I'm looking forward.
Okay, thanks for that, Andreas.
With great pleasure, I'm looking forward to part 2.
Awesome. Good. Okay, see you, Andreas.
Thank you, Andy. Bye-bye.
Great. So that was the interview, part 1, with Andreas Gruss. It's now time to wrap up this podcast. But before I do that, I've got to end off with an LRH quote. This one I think relates a little bit to the interview you just listened to. It's called Knowledge, and it's from the Philadelphia Doctorate Course, Lecture 20. And this is quite a... I think lecture... I mean, lots of the tech has been squirreled, but I think Lecture 20 is one of the ones where there's a specific line that was taken out that is really important when it comes to waking up people to the changes in the church. It's either Lecture 20 or Lecture 21. This might be the line. I haven't read it yet, so... Anyway, but let's have a listen to this one. There is only one thing that could happen to Scientology. Yeah, I think this is the line I think the SPs took out because it woke people up too much, you know. It made people go, oh, hold on a second, if they read it in the church. So they just deleted it from the lecture, which is squirreling, which is inappropriate. And that's what the church does. But anyway, it says, there is only one thing that could happen to Scientology, and that is to say that it would be buried. The remedy would be buried. If it ever went out of sight, this world's done. All you've got to do is invalidate it and put it out of sight and hide it, and it'll come up in the wrong place doing the wrong thing, and mankind will find itself a slave. So anybody that knows the remedy of this subject, anybody that knows these techniques, is himself actually under a certain responsibility. That's to make sure that he doesn't remain a sole proprietor. That's all it takes. Just don't remain a sole proprietor. Don't ever think that a monopoly of this subject is a safe thing to have. It's not safe. It's not safe for man. It's not safe for this universe. This universe has long been looking for new ways to make slaves. Well, we've got some new ways to make slaves here. Let's see that none are made. L. Ron Hubbard. Well, after reading that, it seems like L. Ron Hubbard sort of prescribes to my idea that the whole universe is a prison. It seems like he's sort of hinting at the whole universe makes slaves, and because I know there's a question of is it planet Earth or is it the whole universe, and I'm starting to think it's the whole universe. But I think when we sometimes see UFOs and some encounters with aliens, they're actually coming from outside this dimension, you know. Some of them are actually coming from other planets that are far away, but some of them are just popping into this universe to say hello. And yeah, it's possible that this whole universe is a matrix, not just on Earth. And it's like within this matrix, Earth is being used with its implants and stuff to probably lock away some guys that people, some other aliens don't want. So it's like a prison within a prison. I think that idea people have to remember, there's prisons within prisons. And if you really want to trap people, the best thing to do is to put prisons within prisons. That really, you know, you don't just have one prison. You don't just put all these people onto an island and imprison them on the island. You put them in a prison within the island. And then within that prison, you put them into a cell. So there's multiple things they have to break through to get out. Well, studying and improving yourself gets you out of all these prisons. But I heard something by Linda Moulton Howe once, which is really interesting. She was talking about some alien data and going into the area of speculation, which sometimes you need to do. And she was talking about how this universe is a matrix and possibly simulated. And it's within another universe that was simulated, and that's within another universe that was simulated. And so it goes pretty long until you actually find the original universe that started everything. Anyway, these interesting ideas. But this quote by L. Ron Hubbard, it's just saying how important Scientology is, because it'll get hidden away and will pop up people using it in the wrong way, because you can use the Scientology information in a negative way or in a good way because it's spiritual information. It seems like there are some people in the world that are using it in a bad way, and there are some people who are using it in a good way. But I think the thing is to just make sure that it exists and people can find it and have it, because this is valuable information and you need it, and it's a part of getting out of this trap and to prevent yourself from being a slave. It's pretty cool. You know, all these other practices that exist, I mean, they just don't have study tech, so how can you sit down and educate people in the data that they have? You're just going into areas where people just don't properly understand things. You know, this Scientology is really important. Anyway, that's it for today's show. It's time for you to climb back out of this rabbit hole, out of this interesting Scientology world. Thanks for listening. I've been your host, Andy Notch, the Space Cowboy. You have been listening to the Indie Scientology podcast. And remember, what you thought was impossible is possible.